Hey everyone, so I just wanted to quickly talk to you about a product that I think is super underrated but definitely worth considering if you're looking for a low budget streamer or a digital analog converter for a really good price with really good connectivity. So this here is the Yamaha WXC-50. It does come in a different variant, which is the WXA-50. Pretty much it's exactly the same. The only difference is that it has a built-in amplifier here so you can plug it straight into your speakers. So what I really like about this thing is that I think it's very affordable. You can get it for around $400 Australian, but you get a lot of bang for buck with this. So just by looking at it, you can see that's really nicely built. So it's an all alloy housing. So the whole thing is made from metal, apart from this dial here, which is it does look very metallic, but unfortunately it's not. It's made from plastic, but it's really small and compact, so it can fit anywhere. It comes with these 4 rubber feet, which you can actually remove, and then has a plastic special sort of mounting, so you can mount it vertically to save even more space. So really cool form factor, beautifully built. And then we'll go talk about the connections. So regarding connections, we just got the standard power cable here, and on this side here we pretty much have all the inputs. So what this can have input is the optical, we've got hardwired Ethernet, then we've got USB, you've got the triggers if you're using other equipment, and this here is a selector. So for this particular model you can select whether you're using just Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, if you want them both on, or if you want them all off. So it gives you that option of what you want to turn on and off, which I think is pretty cool. So in my case, because I always use it hardwired, I've got it set to just using the Bluetooth. With the USB, it does process 24-bit music. So if you're like me, you can actually plug in a USB with all your high definition 24-bit music and it will play it quite well. Here is your auxiliary in and out. The reason you have auxiliary in is because that you can plug in an analog source, and using the Yamaha MusicCast, it can actually send that music to another room or another speaker if you're using that system. And the auxiliary out, I'll talk about this later, but I wouldn't recommend using this one. If you've got a subwoofer, this is where you'll plug it in. And then this here is another plate that you can see, and this is where what you'll use for outputting to your amplifiers. So here is the analog output that you would use, and so the reason that there's actually 2 analog ones and I recommend using this one is because this amplifier actually has 2 DACs inside. So there's actually been a sort of a teardown done by one website that found that on the PCB board there's a Burr Brown DAC as well as a ESS Sabre DAC. And so I've actually confirmed with Yamaha, and the Burr Brown one is slightly worse quality and is used when outputting from this one here, whereas the ESS Sabre DAC, that's actually when you're outputting from this one here, regardless of whether it's in preamp or player mode, it will output through here. So if you want the highest sound quality, do make sure that you're outputting from this one here. In addition to that, you also have the optical out and coax out. And here you can also change whether it is a preamp or player. So what that means is that if it's in the preamp, you can sort of use Yamaha's enhancer for sound. I personally don't, and you can also regulate the volume using this knob. I personally like the player mode because it doesn't use that enhancer and it just leaves the music exactly as it is, and it's just a fixed output of 2 volts, which you can actually change in the settings. So you can see here that there's a lot of connections and I think it's really good. The only thing that I wish it did have was a coaxial input, and I guess some people will also notice that there's no sort of HDMI ARC, which is very common now with some of the audio gear. This is lacking it. This isn't really a receiver. That's something you'd really have to go for, receiver specific units. But if you're using it like I do with a TV, you can use the optical in, and that's what I use at the moment. So this here is pretty much the setup that I have. So you can see here where I use it is down here, and because it's so nice and small and compact, it fits in beautifully. So what I use it for is I use it to play the music from this 4K player right here, as well as just from general TV, and also from the console. So the console and the 4K player, they'll output to the TV through HDMI, and then from the back of the TV I just output through optical cable into the Yamaha. I also have a USB here that I have with I've ripped all my CDs onto it, as well as put on 24-bit music. So I've got that plugged in. As you can see here, these are the connections that I have. So I've got the hardwired Ethernet for using Spotify and internet radio. I've got the optical in. I've also got just a sort of a USB extension for the USB drive, just because it gets pretty annoying to always have to reach back and put in the USB. So it's just a lot easier when it sits like that. And then this one here, I talked before that you should always output from these two here if you're using analog. So this is my analog output going to my integrated amplifier. So I use the Sony TA-A1 ES, which is the ES range of Sony gear. This is just a pure stereo integrated amplifier, and it works really well, I find. What I really like about this amplifier is all the features that it comes with. So even though it's such a, I would say, a very entry-level budget product, it's, you know, pretty heavy on some really useful features. So it has its own dedicated app that you can use on an iPad or phone. So in this case, I'll just use the iPad, and you can see here that depending on the amount of Yamaha products that you have in your system, they will all be here, where you can actually go to each individual one and actually customize everything about it. So you can see here that there's lots you can do, from changing the auto power on, to changing the dimmer, to sorting music. Here you can sort of go and edit different things regarding what comes up in your home screen. So lots of cool features, but what I think is really good is sort of the advanced settings, where there's lots of very helpful things in here. So if you go to sound, this is where you can turn on the different enhancers. Hopefully you can see that. So at the moment mine's blanked off just because it's currently in the player mode, but if you switch it to preamp, you can put on the enhancer, you can put on different bass extension, you can actually change the equalizer. Actually, maybe I'll just change it to the player mode so you can see. Okay, so I've changed it to the player mode. So now if we go to advanced features, you'll see that you'll be able to actually individually change everything. So here you can turn on the enhancer, bass extension. You can even change the equalizer to manual, auto, or bypass. So if you go to manual, you can sort of adjust the different high, mid, and low frequencies here. So it's not a 5-level equalizer, but it's still quite useful in that sense. So I normally would have this bit off, but you can see how much you can customize. Then you can also go to volume, and you can actually set the initial volume, and then you can set a max volume. So this might seem a little bit strange, but I actually used to use this previously because the integrated amplifier I have is very sensitive and has an input voltage of 150 millivolts, whereas most Blu-ray players and things will output at 2 volts. So that means that if I really crank the volume on the amplifier, I'd start clipping. So I used to originally actually reduce the max volume and the initial volume for this so that it would never get to that clipping stage. So it's something to keep in mind, that it's nice to have this versatility, and it actually does come in handy at times, which I think is really good. What I think is very cool is the input settings. So you can see here that you can actually change the input trim on the volume for all the different inputs. So this is also very handy. So like I mentioned before, with the max volume you can adjust it, or here with the individual apps, because if one's louder than the other, you can actually sort of adjust that so that all your different sources will have the same volume. So it's simple things like that that I think are very great and very useful. And then also another important thing to remember is that you I mentioned before there's an analog input into this that then you can send it off to all the different Yamaha MusicCast devices in your house. So if you're using this for your TV setup, you want to make sure that the audio delay, this setting, is set to off, which is very important because I think by default it's actually set on. So make sure you set that off so that way you won't have any delay when you're watching your content from the TV. So I guess just a very good interface. So here from the main app, this is where you can use different features. For example, you can go to USB, find something that's on the actual USB, like such as Cirque du Soleil. It's already playing, but let's say you can play it here. Or you can go to net radio, radios, and then sort of history. So here I was mucking around a little bit, so if you want Triple J, you can turn it on. However, I guess the other thing that you can do here is using the remote to set favorites. So at the moment we're listening to Triple J, but here you can see that we have the remote. So on here you can actually set favorites. So for example, right now we're listening to Triple J, and if I hit 2, you can see the blue lights change and it's gone to what I set previously, the Cirque du Soleil, to favorite. And you can see then, if I hit number 3, it will actually load up Spotify and play a channel that I've set to as favorite. So the remote does have all these different features, so you can set up to 6 prefixes. If you've got in player mode, you can actually increase and decrease the volume from this one here. You can mute it, and you know, just the standard sort of the standard things, skip track, and then you can change your different inputs from here. So one of the big downsides of this particular player is this remote is just very small and cheap, and it's not very nice, which is a bummer. So the actual chassis on the unit's very nice, but then I think it's really let down by this remote. So that's one thing that you'll get used to it, but it's not as good as it could be. So the other thing is that you'll notice that the interface is quite slow, I find. So if we go to the Yamaha app, that you'll see that, you know, when you go to the internet radio and different things, or the USB, there's no real way to search tracks. You can modify playlists, but the actual interface itself isn't too good, I find. And then you've also got it on your phone as well, so you can see that it's all integrated. And but I think that, you know, I've read online about other similar streaming DACs such as the Blue Node, which have a much better interface. One important thing that I think, if you're sort of looking at this and you're comparing it to, for example, a Sonos sound system, is that this is really great because it does support 24-bit music. So I've got a USB here that does have, for example, this album here is a 24-bit album, and you know, it does support 24-bit and those higher quality audio files. So this is something that has a big advantage over Sonos, in my opinion, as well as a much nicer build quality. And I think the sound quality is quite good. So unfortunately, the only this is recording currently from the Sony RX camera, so the microphone in this isn't very good. I'll try with a Yeti mic. Alright, so now I'll just try a Led Zeppelin song using the Yeti mic, so we'll see how it sounds and give it a go. So push, and let's see how it goes.
I'm gonna leave you. I said, baby.
That was Led Zeppelin. Let's try maybe something a little bit different. So I'm just gonna choose something from Spotify now. Alright, so this time around I'm gonna do a song called Tidal Wave, and we'll see how that one goes by the Old Sea Brigade. So playing it from the iPad, and it should go off.
It's heavy now, we don't change. Come back down, keep it set. Spinning round, lost my mind. Keep it up, killing time. Don't wait up, it'll be okay. Know it's coming at me like a tidal wave.
So I guess to sum it up, I think the pros of this are, first of all, it has a really good price. So you're getting a lot of bang for buck, and it's really that entry level where you're getting really good quality. It has a very nice build to it. So the build quality I think on this unit is really nice, and everyone can be super happy, especially with how compact it is and that you can put it either horizontally or vertically so you can fit it anywhere. I think it's got really good features, so you can see there that I just basically went through a couple of the different features that you can go through, but there's actually quite a lot you can do with it, especially in this price range. You're getting a lot of different customization and things that I think there'll be something there for everyone. So I know I'm personally really happy with even the simple things such as being able to set the initial volume and the max volume, so I think that's really good. You can see that the connectivity is there's a lot that you can do there. You've got your USB, you've got your optical in, you've got different streaming services, whether it's internet radio, Spotify, Tidal. It's really good in that sense. It also has really good sound quality. So the analog output is very good. I find it's not going to be anything like the Blue Node sound, which is really good, or any of the higher end ones. But I think at this level, it's really good, especially for people like me that use the Dali Zensa speakers, which are around the $1,000 mark. I think you'll be really happy with it. And so you're getting really good, I find, really nice tight bass. The sort of the high frequencies sound really good. So from all my listening of all the different genres, I've been really happy. So there's no real problems there. I guess the 3 points that I really don't like about this amplifier is, first of all, that it has this really poor, cheap remote, which I guess is a bit of annoying when you've got this nice alloy amplifier and a really cheap remote, but I guess there has to be some compromises made to bring the price point down. As well as that, I think the lack of coaxial input, so that's a bit of a killer for me, because for my 4K player, it only outputs in coax and HDMI. So this TV here that I have, it's a mid-range model, so it actually doesn't output 24-bit, only outputs 16-bit for audio. So you can see here that without the coax, I sort of have to go through optical and then goes down to 16-bit. And then the last thing is that the interface on this is a little bit slow. So you can see that as demonstrating that it's a little bit slow and sluggish. Probably a bit hard to search through your songs. If you've got lots of different albums there, it'll be hard to find what you're looking for. So not very user-friendly in that way. So for me personally, I will pretty much never go through the interface. I'll normally use just Spotify from my phone and just use it like that, or just from USB. But that's pretty much it. I think it's really good. I think everyone will be happy with this amplifier, and let me know what you think of it. Thank you.